Hello everyone and welcome to the Planning Game podcast, your weekly podcast for real world planning solutions to real world planning problems. My name's John McDermott from Town Planning Expert. Let's get right into it. Okay, so welcome back to the Planning Game, and joining me tonight, well, on the South Coast, she's a bit of a legend, really. She's hosted PIN for a few years, and then she was a property developer, still is a property developer, and now she's the lead at the Property Investing Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, please, Bronwen Vearncombe.
Thank you very much, John. That's yeah, very cheesy. Lovely.
That's about as cheesy as it gets, to be absolutely fair, Bronwen. So we've known each other for quite a few years now. I think I was a lot younger and a lot thinner when you knew me, and weirdly you had different coloured hair.
Yes, I did.
What happened there?
Well, you know, in that corporate world of banking, I was there for 21 years. You know, it was all about appearances, and oh my goodness, you know, can't let your roots show. And you know, then I went around the world a couple of years ago, and I thought, sod it, who cares? You know, I want to be my authentic Bronwen, you know, and also, you know, in the middle of Australia in the outback, as we were last year, I'm like, I'm not going to find a hairdresser anywhere. So yeah, but you know, it's more about me now. It's more about what I want to do, not about first impressions now, I think.
And that's quite cool, really. So I ask all of my sort of bigger guests to tell us a bit about their story, because as we were saying before we started, us Brits are storytellers. Our whole history is stories. Yeah, all the way back to King Arthur. That's a great story based on legend. So tell us about the legend of Bronwen. How did this thing start? Because it's been 4 years, hasn't it, or thereabouts?
Yeah, well, actually, it's been 6 years since I started thinking about whether property was a good idea or not. And I was in that corporate rat race, really, 21 years in Lloyd's Bank. And then I did a bit of work with the NHS, trying to get them to save money in the back office. And, you know, I just thought, well, I was told I couldn't take my pension until I was 67. I'm like, shit, I'm not going to be working when I'm that age. And I'm certainly not going to be working beyond 55 was my aim, because that's when my dad retired. So anyway, yes, rewind 6 years ago. I sold all my shares, had enough deposit with a bit of a legacy, and enough deposit to buy a flat. Flat was in Winchester. I thought, this is going to let day in, day out. The estate agent, lettings agent, said they could do everything for me, and the rest is history. I got that and thought, hang on a minute, is a 5% yields enough? And then I read a book called Property Magic by Simon Zucci.
Yeah.
And I thought, would some of those ideas that he had and some of the things that he does in the Midlands, I thought, well, doubt if it'll work on the South Coast, but maybe I ought to investigate a little bit more. And then I did his course for 12 months. So yeah, we finished that then 5 years ago. Managed to create a portfolio of HMOs at that point in Southampton and Portsmouth that gave us enough to leave our corporate jobs. So yes, I absolutely left the rat race, but of course I wasn't completely free. The aim was to continue to build our portfolio and perhaps do different things. So now where we are, my husband John and myself, we've got 4 different businesses, really, you know, 3 of them in property. So we've got the HMOs still. We don't do them anymore, but we've still got them. We've got guest houses. They're really, really interesting. That's a trading business, of course. So that's a very different type of business, but it's a great return on investment for us. And then we've got development. So we've worked together on some of those issues that we've had with developing, and that's been massive lessons. And we'll come on to that in a minute. And then education. And I've got my property investing foundation, which is my business, my education business. And that started a couple of years ago when we were about to go around the world. I wanted to take something with me, and I wanted to educate people online. And of course, in the current situation, that's proved extremely fruitful because it's already out there.
Kind of got the jump on all of us. The rest of us who were doing face to face, you kind of went that one stage further and went wholly online, which is really cool. Your history is diverse. I mean, that's the thing. You're not like so one of the people that we've talked about on the planning game that I'm not going to mention because it's unethical, but it's named after a city in the UK.
Yeah.
That there are many people named after a city in the UK. There's no way. But the big criticism of that kind of guru, shall we call them, is that they promise the world with no real hard anything behind them, right? So there's a lot of promise without any substance. But you're different, and kind of why when you said yes, I'll come on talk about my property journey, my education journey, all of that. I wanted to say yes pretty much immediately because I know what you've done in the past. You have done developments, and your developments are quite spectacular, and you're using one of them at the moment to help our colleagues in the NHS, aren't you? Or to help the current crisis.
Yeah, well, that's the guest house business actually that's doing that. So we've always focused on emergency housing, particularly in one of our larger ones, which is 26 bedrooms. And we diversified a little bit in the winter. So when we got back from Australia last year, we were asked by the council to house the street homeless, which was completely different for us. And we never thought we would look at that sector. And because it's really, really expensive from an insurance point of view, but also it's very, very hard to manage. But they approached us and we said, look, yes, let's work together, because if we can work together so that we feel comfortable with it and we support these people who are, just find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's really tough for them. So what we did is say, we dedicated 12 rooms to house the street homeless between October and February. We measured it. The council, one of the conditions of them staying is that they have to see a social worker, and also the council provides security for us if we had any issues. And we do have a live-in manager there. So we gave it a go. And a third of those people moved on to the next stage of housing during that period. So there was a grant, that's why we were asked, there was a grant given to the council centrally from the government at the time. But since then, they've said, look, this works really well from their point of view, because they bring the people in and they help find, claim the benefits that they need to claim, which helps the council then fund the next stage. And it's a real win-win. So I think in everything we've done, and it has been a bit diverse, but it's always been working with other people in collaboration. So our developments have been joint ventures quite, all the time actually. We did one conversion, that was a joint venture. That was our first thing we did in the first year of learning. That was a conversion in Walnut Grove in Southampton, a house with 6 flats. We didn't need planning for that, luckily. And this is a nugget that might be useful for listeners. That property was brought to us by an agent who said, you wanted to find unusual properties. Well, this one, we don't know how to value it. Do you want to come and have a look at it? So we went, yeah, of course we would. And it was a really weird, it was a massive house, split up into 1 4-bed house and then 2 flats on the end. And those 2 flats were only partly converted. They hadn't been finished, so they weren't lived in. And they got planning permission back in the 1960s to convert the house into flats. And we went, I've learned about this. from our course was, and from yourself, is that once it's got permission and it's already started, you need to get permission again. So hey presto, we were able to go ahead with converting the whole of that property to 6 flats without needing to go through the planning process. So that was brilliant. And then Andover is 8 houses that we had a real issue with getting planning with that issue.
That was the working man's club, wasn't it? So that was the real argument about loss of a working man's club when the working man's club had died. I mean, it was gone. It was a dead parrot as far as everyone apart from the council was concerned.
It had been bust for 2 years. We bought it from a receiver, and we bought it without planning. So yeah, you remember it well. Now we still haven't really overcome that issue, because we still got the club. It's derelict pretty much. But what we managed to get eventually was planning to build on the car park. The club now has been designated for a sort of medical use.
Yeah.
Which it isn't, it's never going to be used for that, because it's just not appropriate.
Yeah.
But it was the only class we could get whilst we fought the issues. So yeah, we've built the houses now. They're finished. They've just been completed. They've not been sold yet. But those 8 houses will pay for all the costs, pay back all our investors, and profit. We hope, of course. And the rest of the plot then is the original club plus that back garden, which is massive. And our plan is to knock that down and build another 6 houses. But perseverance is the word on that one. It's a pincer-like movement that we've had to do. We've gone in for pre-app on the 6 houses now to knock down. And we've done everything we need to do to prove that club is no longer viable and there is no other use for it.
Yeah.
And we've worked really hard to get all that evidence together. So we will be applying for that fairly soon. So
good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It's actually really nice to see an end to that one, to be fair, because I know when we worked on it together those years ago, it was a really tough one because the evidence just wasn't there, and it's taken time. And as you say, that perseverance is so important.
And financing, to be perfectly honest, because I think the council felt, the planners at Test Valley, I think they felt that we didn't really know what we were doing and that we probably would just give up. But we didn't, because we've got a great network of people. We've got great investors. We were able to put my SAS pension, we did a loan back on that. So we were able to fund that very, very cheaply. And we didn't, if we'd kept a bridging loan on that, we would have been really, really stuffed financially. And, because of the different ways of financing things gives you flexibility. And that's really what I think made that really work for us.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, because that's quite interesting, really. That it was the way you financed that deal that effectively saved it. Yes. And I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen as a mentor and a trainer, mentees come through, and it's all about bridging. It's all about bridging, and it's got to be done in 12 months, and it's all about bridging. And if I don't get it, it's a disaster. Do you think that's a common misconception, or a common, what's the best word, a common mistraining that goes on? That planning's easy, it's simple, you just get consent, it'll all be sorted in 12 months, don't worry about a 12-month bridge, you'll get it done. You think that's something that's just put out there? Well,
no, I think that that can be an answer if everything lines up. And the problem with planning is it's never that straightforward, especially if you've bought something that's a little bit unusual. And of course, you're going to buy below market value if it's unusual, and you're going to take a few little risks with it. But for us, we also did bridging loans when we first started out, because there didn't seem to be alternatives. But I think as you build up an investor group, and you find people who are happy to invest with you, then it gives you so much more flexibility. And having done bridging loans before, they are so difficult. There's so many forms to fill in. They really are not interested in you as an individual. They just want their money. And any variation or any delays, they're going to just charge you so much money. And we went through that process a couple of times, and it was so hard and so uncomfortable. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think it isn't necessarily the easiest way, but sometimes it's the only way when you're starting out. But
yeah, true. And sometimes it is those companies that are the only people who will loan to zero experience.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on then, because we've got a new book out, which is amazing. Building Your Dream Life, and I understand on Amazon and on Audible and all good book retailers. Let's say that.
Kindle, and yes, it is. It's actually global. It's across the world, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness!
Why, but that's my publisher. Yeah.
So the inspiration, I guess, is your life, really. I mean, you've spent the last 6 years building this from scratch. It's not like it just happened overnight. So tell us a little bit about the book, and then something I've asked every one of the sort of big names that's come and seen me on the podcast is, if you were starting from scratch and you didn't have the book, you were talking to a younger version of yourself, hand on the shoulder, do this. What would be that one piece of advice? But let's talk about the book first.
Talk about the book. Well, the book, I never thought I would write a book. It's not really something I find easy to do at all. But I think my story is a little bit different, and I was really keen to get that out to as many places as I could, because what I found was after 3 years, John signed up to do the Clipper Around the World yacht race. One of his absolute dreams was to cross an ocean, or just one ocean, in fact. But he ended up doing the whole of the world, and it was just phenomenal to sign up to do something like that after just 2 years of hard work in property. Was pretty amazing. Now, I always like a good goal. that cost £50,000. We had to pay for that. It took us 12 months to raise that money, but by having that goal set, it gave us real focus. And John said to me, well, look, if you're going to let me do this and it's 12 months, what are you going to do? So I went, okay, well, I'll come out and see you in various places. But he said, well, why don't you go to all of the places? And I'm like, I'm not sure the business will go. And I had no idea at the time, really. Would we be able to keep the business going, and would it continue to work well in our absence?
Yeah.
And could technology support that? And it absolutely did. And I didn't come back to the UK for 12 months either. I went from place to place. I had my own adventures. I volunteered in New Zealand and in Namibia in conservation, which is wonderful. That was a big dream for me. And I carried on the business. So I had my education business, online webinars. I was coaching people in all sorts of different places in the world. And quite often people didn't even know where I was. I had my headset on. I was sitting on the balcony in the, 5 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
and coaching somebody. And it just proved that it was possible. So I wanted to write about what made the difference between us and other people who end up managing their own portfolios and creating another job, and a really difficult one. What was it that we did that was different? And that's what this book is about. It wasn't easy. There were loads of problems along the way, and the book's got all those problems in it. It's got 15 case studies. It's got all sorts of, how did we overcome? And what was it in our mindset as well that gave us that sort of determination, I suppose, to make it work. So that's what the book is about. And, I'm so pleased I'm getting some brilliant reviews, because it's a bit different. It's
Well, yeah, it is. It is. That's the thing. It's real. And as you know, I'm really, really big on real. There's no point in doing things theoretically if you've actually done them. There's no point in talking about theory if the practice is very, very different. And I think that's the important thing. And what makes certainly, your story, Bronwen, so compelling is it's all real. It's all happened.
Yeah, it is. It is. But the key thing I would say to this group is always work with experts. And, that's great because, TPX is experts. Always work with people, and don't don't follow the cheapest route at all. Go very expensive, because it's worth it. I think that's where we've been happy to share our profit. We've been happy to give people who manage our guest houses quite a large share of the profit, because it means we don't need to physically be there. We have responsibility, of course, that never goes away, massive responsibility. But the doing bit on the ground, we have really good people, and we work very well together. And we've met those over that whole period. And I love what I do because I love the people I work with.
Well, you can tell that because you radiate every single time you talk about it.
Yeah.
The question I get asked, and the question that irks me the most, and this is a phrase bandied around. You've got to the point where you're getting your dream life. Probably no one ever gets to that pinnacle. They never get to the absolute Shangri-La of their life.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think anyone would ever get to what I would call financial freedom. I think we're always going to have those draws. There's always going to be that need. It's not like money just rains from trees.
No.
Do you think there's ever such a thing as financially free?
I think it means different things to different people, and you hear it bandied about all the time. And hopefully I've not ever been quoted to say that, because I just don't.
I couldn't find it. I do research on every single one of my interviewees. You've never said it. You've never said it.
I don't think it means anything. I think it is about building your dream life, and your dream life is going to be very different to my dream life. And I think the freedom is something I use. That word I use a lot. We're highly geared, especially early days, because we didn't have massive amount of money. We remortgaged our own home to create that seed capital for the first few properties.
Yeah.
And of course, down here, properties are not cheap. So we ran out of money pretty much in the first few months. And we've always then geared up. So we use mortgages, interest-only mortgages. We have investors that work with us. So very, very highly geared. Now, as an ex-banker, I've been comfortable with that to a point. But we've always, after the first couple of years, thought, how do we start to pay down some of that debt? Because that is going to hold us away from that freedom, because it's massive responsibility. So our aim in the developments was to be able to create much larger sort of pots of money that we could then pay down debt with. Now that's quite hard, because you're always looking at the next deal and the next deal in development, because if something nice comes up, then it's like, maybe I shouldn't pay down all some of the stuff I was doing. Maybe I'll just hang on to it for that next one. So that's really our strategy now, is to pay down the debt where we feel, we want to get that balance a little bit better.
Sure. No, I completely hear that. You've multiple businesses, which is amazing. 3 dealing with property precisely, and 1 dealing with education.
Yeah.
When I'm teaching property investors, talk about the vital importance of firstly making sure that they replace their income. Absolutely vital. Otherwise, going into property investment is like being a lemming jumping off a cliff. I know they don't actually do that. I'm referring to the 1990s video game, but it's like, you're jumping out of a plane without the parachute, right? And I talk a lot about the importance of having parachutes built into any investment or any strategy.
Yeah.
But how much do you think having those multiple investment arms or multiple income arms has helped you to get to where you are now? Has it given you that support network?
Yeah, it certainly has. And I think in times in times of issues like COVID-19 at the moment, it's given us flexibility because, you know, we do have issues. Those 8 houses aren't sold. We do have an empty 2-bed maisonette in Winchester that's just been refurbed. It's empty at the moment. Okay, some of our HMOs, we've only got 2 tenants at the moment not paying, which is not bad at the moment. But the guest house business is phenomenal because of our particular niche there. And we've adapted one of the booking.coms to support the homeless as well. So you've got to have that risk spread a little bit. You know, the education business, obviously that's another stream of income, as is the book. So I suppose it would be nice to say it was all planned. It wasn't planned quite like that. I think
never is.
We fell into the guest house strategy because we were going to convert this place to flats. We thought we convert it to 10 flats. What should we do while we get planning?
Yeah.
And you were involved in some of that because we looked at the sui generis planning for that property and we went, oh, hang on a minute. It's got planning to short-term let the rooms. Why don't we carry on its use?
It's almost the perfect essay.
Yeah.
It is an essay use. You stumbled on to the original serviced accommodation.
Absolutely. And because essay wasn't really a term in those days.
No,
and that was only 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So yeah, it wasn't really planned, but if you know your numbers and if you can get the right finance, that first place we bought with investor funds as a joint venture. Now we do all the work. We did all the work. We've got 3 other investors in that. They're shareholders. And they get massive return. They get a huge return on their investment at the moment. We manage it really well with a live-in manager, etc. Now, you know, we've replicated that with 3 other properties because why wouldn't you? You know, economies of scale. If something's working well, replicate it. Now that business is another business, a trading business. That if we can get that efficient, because we do all the back office stuff in terms of, you know, operations and things. If we can get that really efficient, then it's a saleable business. So that there's an exit in a number of different ways. We could still convert to flats, we could exit, we could sell it as a going concern. You know, it gives us lots of options. But the other ones we didn't buy, we're leasing. We've got a purchase lease option and 2 long leases. Again, gives you flexibility because you know, you're not having to fork out all that capital. But you can create value from it. So yeah, so looking at the way that it's grown up, I think that's again in the book, is how did we move from one thing to the next? You know, we didn't just stumble across it. We continued to learn, and we're still learning now. You know, we just sold this property in Addleston. Well, we haven't completed on it yet.
You might not complete on it for a little while.
Well, interesting. We'll see. But that's an office block. You know, we can convert it to flats. Someone else offered us a lot of money for that, a lot more than we paid for it. And again, you know, having the flexibility of saying, well, we can fund it. That's probably, I would say, the most beneficial thing that we've been really, really good at is funding. Is investors and getting the right sort of finance in place. So going back to one of your earlier questions, that really is fundamental when you're starting out. It's really hard because you haven't got credibility with either the lenders or the investors. But if you can get some investors at the start, they stick with you. You know, I've got investors that have, you know, probably quadrupled their investment with us over time, and they're looking for the next deal because they're getting such a great return. But you're only as good as the last deal you've done, so you can't be complacent at all. You've got to keep communicating. So
absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. I've seen and I've spoken to investors who have got very, very cross with their investment partner, the JV partner on the ground, because the JV partner is on Facebook on holiday somewhere, and their investment hasn't come out the ground yet, and it's just sitting doing shite all. And I think that's almost one of the worst mistakes certainly a new developer can make, is to lose that communication, because once that trust is gone, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to bring it back again.
Yes, absolutely. And you do see big names. And when I first started out, just not quite getting there, and then suddenly the whole stack of cards falls over if you overpromise and underdeliver, or make one thing can go wrong and everything falls over. So you've got to balance your risks. You really have to. And
Absolutely.
we're not going to do too much at any one time. We were in Australia for 6 months last year, and we found that Addleston deal with our JV partner. We funded that in 2 weeks, the exchange in 2 weeks from investors while we were in Australia. So, that whole communication, we weren't on holiday, we were working. So we just carried on, and we were able to do that. But, half our investors didn't even know we were in Australia, and they don't need to, there's nothing wrong with the phone and Zoom and
no, there's not. And if you're communicating with them, then it's great. Our primary investor for our two biggest deals, the two sort of listed buildings that we're dealing with down in Plymouth and Pembroke Dock, lives in Singapore. He's an expat. He lives in Singapore, and we have a WhatsApp group with him. We communicate with him constantly. We get very drunk with him. It's amazing. That's lovely.
Yeah, well, there used to be Skype coffee. We used to call it Skype coffee. I think it's got to be Zoom wine. Zoom, I don't know, it doesn't quite go. But...
It's definitely Zoom gin and tonics that are occurring.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Right, so one of the questions that I said I would ask you, and I'm going to now, because we're coming to the end of the podcast, really, is a lot of learnings. There's no such big thing as a bad experience. There's only ever learnings. So if you were to sort of throw the arm over your younger self and give that one piece of advice right at the start, what would it be?
Well, that's difficult because I've got so many. I would certainly say the reason I wrote my book is so that I reach a wider audience. If I'd known what I know now, if I'd known it 20 years ago, I would have done it sooner. And that's fine. But I never look back. I always look ahead. There's still so much adventure out there. I would say do make sure that you do your due diligence for who you're going to learn with. I must have spoken to 6-7 different organizations, and I went with the ones that resonated with me in terms of my values, and that is critical. I see so many people getting their fingers burnt because they go along with the marketing and they go, oh, it's free, it's a free course, oh, run to the back of the room. And there's loads of those out there. And to come back to what we talked about very early on this podcast was there are people out there who their main income is from education. So make sure you find somebody that's actually investing, isn't just teaching. And obviously I'm one of those. I do teach people. I teach people the very basics, foundation stuff. And that's grown over the last couple of years. And I just love it. Absolutely love it. But it doesn't take over my life. It's not my only thing I do. I do it because I enjoy it.
I think that's really sage advice, because I would couch it like this, really. Learn from someone who's doing and teaching on the side, right? Not someone who's teaching and who might occasionally do something. I think that's the wrong way around, rather than the other way, which is they're active, they're doing it, and it is that they're able to present as their social proof. Bronwen, if people want to get hold of you, if they want to come and speak to you, have time with you, have a virtual coffee in this brave new corona world that we're in, how do they do it?
I've got lots of time.
How do they get hold of you?
They get hold of me. Find me on social media. It's very, very easy, because with a name like mine, you can find me. I have a website, propertyinvestingfoundation.com. That's also easy to find, but it's investing with an ING, Property Investing Foundation. But yeah, just find me on social media, send me a message. I'm very active there, and I'll send you a link to book a free 30-minute chat. It's great. And I do Zoom as well.
Excellent. Bronwen, thank you very much for joining me on the planning game. As with this whole COVID thing, I have no idea who I'm interviewing next, but I'll catch you guys next time. And stay safe, stay well. Remember, stay at home, protect the NHS, save some lives. Have a good day.
Thank you.